So, Rudy, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan concluded their pre-draft press conference today, and it had to have been probably the vaguest press conference we've ever heard from them to date. And so it got me thinking a little bit. If we had to give a similar press conference to the podcast press, what would that look like? Like, for example, so just roll with me here. I'm going to role play a little bit and just shoot off the hip. All right. Excuse me, Mr. Solis, Mr. Solis III. Question today. Everyone, there's been a lot of anticipation all month. What can we expect from you and Raymond on Thursday night's GoldCast episode?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Raymond. So we are most likely going to produce an episode of the GoldCast. We're pretty sure. About 100%, maybe 50%, maybe not. Probably not, but we most likely will. We're probably going to talk about various sports. Could be the Niners, could be the Warriors, could be the Giants, could be all three, could be none of them. Maybe we go with the Sharks. We've never talked about the Sharks before, but maybe this week we do. I think it's important that the podcasting world not know what exactly we're going to be talking about each episode. We got to keep that secret. But I want you to know that whatever we produce, you're going to love it. You're going to be proud of it. It's going to be good. But I'm not saying we're producing a show, but I'm saying if we do, it's going to be good. But even if we don't, it'll still be good. Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
Boom! Raymond, man, I almost knocked my headset off. That's how pumped I was.
Your head
Raymond,
almost went boom.
My head almost went boom. The whole thing went boom. Kyle Shanahan behind me, he almost went boom. So, Raymond, the pre-draft press conference with Shanahan and Lynch was today. This is the official 49ers draft week. It's not the NFL draft week. It's the 49er draft week. If you go onto every show, every YouTube channel, every ESPN show, every NFL Network show, every sports show out there covering the draft, the number one topic, the first topic is, what are the 49ers doing at number 3? It's been amazing. It's been great to just see our team front and center, first segment on every sports news source. That is what I see. That is what we deserve. Now, Raymond, this press conference today was amazing. It was hilarious. I think Shanahan's ability to be so vague and so like over the top on how confusing he wanted to be at times was really great. And he gave although he said them very earnestly, he gave some really smart-ass answers that I was like, man, if you said that kind of thing in grade school, you would have gotten in a lot of trouble. It was great. First of all, before we break down our initial takeaways, our reactions to this great press conference, I want to know, what was your initial impression of overall, just the way they approached this?
Well, I think Kyle Shanahan's better at, kind of throwing little jabs at the media than John Lynch is. John Lynch is so more like vanilla, diplomatic, very standard PR, general statement. It's not his forte, whereas Kyle is a little looser about it. So, and I think he takes pleasure in it because I'm sure behind the curtains, because we don't have to hide behind the curtains on this show, but I know behind those curtains, he probably gets irritated with the press just as much as we do, and probably more so because he knows everything there is to know about football, and it's got to be so asinine to get asked some of the inane questions that get thrown his way on a weekly basis from sports writers who are just fans like us, to their credit, but also, a lot of times, we won't name any names, but sometimes they fudge things up with stupid questions. Although to the those who will not be named, he didn't ask too many stupid questions today. He actually asked two. His second question was the most poignant question of the two that he asked. And that was whether Mike McGlinchey was going to get signed.
Which one was him? Because I was trying to figure that out. I couldn't quite hear.
He's the one who asked about Mike McGlinchey at the very end.
Oh, okay. okay, that was him. Because I knew he was one of those guys. I
It
was
was
like,
straight up too. It was a straight up question, and they got a straight up answer. So it was one of the better questions because it was the only question that we actually got something out of. Everything else was dodging, circling around the bush. It was like dodgeball. It was like verbal dodgeball today.
you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of those press conferences that like Marvel directors and actors have to do all the time when they're like, so this new Avengers movie, what do you think's going to happen? What happens with the character? Well, events take place, things happen, villains are fought, wars are waged. Like
I'm in it. Everyone here on the panel's in it.
We have lines. We say lines. We speak. There's a couple special effects moments, and then it wraps up, and then and then we get a little post credits scene, and that's it. That's kind of how they responded to everything. They sounded like a bunch of actors on a NDA after signing an NDA contract and after having performed in a Marvel movie. There's like, I can't answer any question you have.
We hope the fans are gonna love it, which is exactly what John and Kyle said, or more John than Kyle. But John was like, we hope the fans will be happy with once we make the decision.
Yeah,
I think we're all going to have a sign of relief once they make this damn decision.
Several people said that. How much they just can't wait for this to be over. I, in particular, have really enjoyed this journey. It's been great. It's been wonderful to the Niners literally blew up the draft. We blew it up. This one move, the ramifications across the league. And I think we're going to see more ramifications on Thursday take place. The fact that they went so bold. And I think this really going back to the very first draft with John Lynch when he made that trade with the Chicago Bears to go up and unfortunately get Solomon Thomas, who unfortunately did not pan out the way we wanted, but then was unable to get back in the draft and grab Reuben Foster at the end. We've seen from the very beginning that John Lynch is not afraid to make big moves, and you really have to be in an NFC West that's aggressive as ours. I would say the other team that's been equally as aggressive as us has been the Rams. Albeit a different style and a different philosophy. They've been more about grabbing the big free agent. They literally basically bought a team in 2017 to take them to the Super Bowl, which they achieved. Unfortunately, they weren't able to win, but they bought a team that got them there. It worked insofar as that they got to the Super Bowl. They weren't able to seal the deal, but it worked, and so them going out and getting Matt Stafford, I think this third year with Jimmy G injured again for the season and the Rams going to get Matt Stafford, I think it became very apparent to the 49ers that it was time. They needed to draft a quarterback. They needed to grab a quarterback that they could get from his rookie year and groom him from the beginning so that all he's ever knows is the Shanahan system. And I think that was really important. And then also, obviously, hopefully, to grab a quarterback that was going to be more durable and one we can rely on physically more than Jimmy G. And that they straight up addressed that, and it's in my top 6 favorite moments of the conference. But before we get into that, Ray, I want you to start, and let's begin first with just the numbers, the amount of time that these guys put into trying to find the right quarterback to lead the 49ers into the next phase of the franchise.
Yeah, this was some crazy stats that I'd never really heard before. I don't know if John went over these similar stats last season. Certainly not I'm pretty sure he did not do that last season, and I don't recall him doing that in 2019. But according to John Lynch and staff, everybody involved in this whole process, they went to 176 games and practices. That's with COVID. They took part in, according to John Lynch, nearly 400 Zoom calls with schools. They made countless calls and texts to get background information. They interviewed, this is crazy, nearly 600 players in person, by phone, or by Zoom. That has got to be a nonstop, exhaustive process. To get 600 players, that means you're just doing that all day in some regard. And he said that was a collective effort. So it says it was him and Kyle and scouts and coaches. So I imagine that he didn't interview all 600 players, but I mean, certain scouts and coaches were also doing interviews as well. So it was like he said, a collective effort. Not everybody was no one person was at every single one of those interviews. They covered 128 separate pro days. They have roughly 160 draftable players between the 8 picks that they got. 8 or 9 picks, something like that. And the number of players they were permitted to officially give physicals to was 150, which is down from 350, according to John Lynch. And that they've done extensive research on over 350 players. So 350 potential draftees. So that's got to include, that has to include players that are outside of the draft.
Well, they did say, I don't know if you caught this one, but at the end of all those numbers, Lynch said that they came away with, of those players, there was, I believe, 160 that landed on their particular draft board. That out of that whole 350, that there was, I believe, 160 that are on their actual draft board. These are the 160 guys that we believe we're capable of drafting, and it just depends on who falls to us.
Which is like single-digit picks. Imagine if they had like 10 or 12 picks. Like that 160's got to be significantly higher. Because like if
so crazy.
Okay, so they got 9 picks after the trade to 3, and obviously this isn't an even divide. The math, at least on their board, it's not going to be an even divide. But for the sake of this demonstration, it's going to be even. If we divide 160 by those 9 picks, that's 17 potential players per pick that they've got. I mean, imagine if they have 2, 3, or 4 more picks on that board. Then you've got 17 times 4. More players that they have to put on that board. It's just wild. I mean, this is simple math here. It's not gonna end up like this on their board, because we know that on the draft they've only talked about 5 quarterbacks. So we know with that one position they've got a couple of players that they know are probably going to go 1 and 2, and then they've got the 3 that they will potentially grab at number 3. So that's insanity. I'm glad it takes a village to do what these guys have done. So credit to the staff and getting all that stuff prepared, because I know draft is never easy, but it's always an exciting time as a Niner fan.
I think there's a lot to be said about how successful the Niners have been. We've been able to, if you go through all of the Lynch drafts, we've been able to grab either generational talent at one position or another, or really, really strong talent at one or several positions. So, I mean, to walk away with the players we have, to walk away with a George Kittle, to walk away with a Mike McGlinchey, to walk away with a Nick Bosa. I mean, these guys, a Fred Warner, these guys, these are huge, huge gets. And I don't think we're done. And I think the amount of work that they put into the quarterback position, I think we're going to be all right. So, Raymond, let's move on to my 6 favorite moments from the press conference. Okay, these are the 6 most. They're the best responses that we got. Okay, so I'm going to be paraphrasing. I'm going to be paraphrasing, but not changing. So everything that you hear from my responses is from the actual transcript of the press conference, but I'll be paraphrasing. I'm taking my favorite responses, because sometimes Shanahan would speak in these giant paragraphs. I'm just taking the responses I like the most. And I sometimes paraphrase the question too, because some of the questions were a little winded. So number 1, the first question that my favorite question that was lobbied at them: do you guys know who you're going to pick at number 3? Has all this research changed who you're going to pick at number 3? That's kind of my basic of that question. Shanahan: I feel good that there are 5 guys at number 3. So do we know exactly who we want? Maybe, probably, maybe not. That was my best.
Oh my God.
That answer was the best. I'm going to repeat it one more time. So do we know exactly who we want? Maybe, probably, but maybe not. That was the best answer. And then he said, I don't feel like we need to say that. And that's not just for our case, but lots of stuff happens between now and the draft, and we don't want the whole league knowing exactly what you're set on 4 days before the draft. I don't know if I want the league to know. I don't think it necessarily helps, and that's why no one's really going to know whether we know or not until we pick. That's kind of what we're comfortable keeping it at. And Lynch was like, what he said. That's all Lynch said. Yeah. That was the best. That was my favorite moment. Just the double speak of Shanahan going in like 3 or 4 different directions was so good.
It sounds like they still haven't revealed to their assistants to avoid any leaks leading up to Thursday.
You know what? I was watching ESPN Today, and ESPN Today finally said that information. Somebody, this is what I think is great about being on the West Coast. There's like no ESPN, NFL Network insiders. These guys, everything they do is so kind of over the top and is not really, there's not a whole lot of basis. It's all hearsay. We don't have any inside guys over here, which is great. Very hard for things to leak out of San Francisco. But from what they said that the only Lynch, Shanahan, and Jed York know. That's it. All right, so number 2, the second question I really enjoyed. This was basically the question was why should how Mac Jones is a wildly unpopular pick amongst fan base, and why should they not be worried about Mac Jones? So Shanahan said everyone's excited to draft a quarterback. If you would have been excited about one of these guys at 12, then you should be excited at 3. It's about whether you get one. So let us go through the process. We're going to get a good one, which I got excited when he said that. He goes, I think the way our years have gone in the past few years, especially when Jimmy's gotten hurt, I think our fan base agrees with that. And they'll be happy that we're going to solve that problem this year. I hope it's the one you want, but we'll see. Basically, whoever you want that day, make that judgment later. Let's see how they help our team out. And that was definitely a moment where I was like, are they getting Mac Jones? Like that almost felt kind of Mac Jones.
Yeah, and I was getting that too because I was like, wait, you already had a guy in mind and you felt that he was going to possibly be available at 12. Of all the quarterbacks that have been discussed at nauseum at this point, Mac Jones is one of those guys, with the exception of Chris Sims and like a small minority of people. Mac Jones was one of those guys that was believed to be one of those guys that was going to fall later, because even though Chris Sims says he's NFL ready, he just thinks that the skill set of all the other quarterbacks outweighs him so much that he would have just fallen off the charts, because everyone would want to take one of the dynamic players, because outside of Mac Jones, everyone else, Trevor Lawrence, Lance, Fields, and then Zach Wilson, those are all dynamic dual threat quarterbacks. And Mac Jones is the one guy who's not. And I think the possibility of him falling to 12, it almost made me think like, was he really thinking Mac Jones and then moved up to 3 to guarantee him the Mac Jones?
Yeah, it was definitely a moment I was a little nervous about. And I was like, I'm going to save my comments on what I think about if they choose Mac Jones for the end. So we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. Number 3. The guy says he had 2 questions, but here's the one I was most interested in the response. Can you say with certainty that Jimmy Garoppolo will be on the roster on Sunday? Shanahan's response: I can't guarantee that anybody in the world will be alive Sunday. So I can't guarantee who will be on our roster on Sunday. So that goes for all of us.
Yeah, that's so good.
That was so good. I was like, you know what? In this post-COVID 2021 world, that's probably actually maybe the most honest response he could give. He said, you can't even guarantee who's going to be alive on Sunday, let alone who's going to be on the roster. And he was like, that even goes for us. He's like, hey, even I can get fired. Even I can be gone. Even I can get fired. We don't even know who's hosting the goal.
What Sunday did he mean? Did he mean the Sunday of this week?
I think
or like starting Sunday.
You know what? It's so funny because I was like, did he mean Sunday when the draft is technically over, or did he mean Sunday? Like, I don't know either. I was like wondering the same thing. Yeah, like
week one Sunday or draft Sunday.
I was thinking draft Sunday, but maybe they meant, as we're unpacking it, maybe they meant regular season Sunday. Either way, Raymond, I was about to say we don't even know who's hosting the GoldCast next Sunday, so it could be anybody. We have no idea.
And, that goes for both of us.
It goes for both of us. Number 4. This is a good one. This is several of these addressed specific things that we had been hearing or had heard earlier on, and I appreciated that. And here was a big one that I thought deserved us highlighting. How much disagreement has there been internally on this decision, and how do you guys kind of go through working through that? Shanahan: I don't think there's been a lot of disagreement. There's opinions, there's conviction. That's what we want. If you're going to ask people's opinion, I think you better listen to it, and we ask people to be convicted. we don't group think. Actually, that was Lynch. I don't think that was Shanahan. I think so. Now I'm getting mixed up, but pretty sure that was Lynch. But we don't group think. We've seen this before. We've seen these moments where they've tried to accuse Shanahan Lynch of there being all this internal strife. We heard this last year, right? This came out before the season last year, before the 2019 season, that Lynch and Shanahan don't get along, and there's all this arguing, and there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of chaos and dysfunctionality between the two. And then they came out and they were like, we know who said that, and we know what they had to gain from that, and that's not true. Like, go ahead, you could say that, but like, we're fine. And they are fine. I mean, they're kids. They hang out with each other's wives and kids. They get together at barbecues. I mean, they do things. You know, that's not a thing. And Lynch also said very earlier on in the conference, in the press conference, he had said that he said he thought it would be very foolish, even though he has the final say on the draft. He thought it would be very foolish to not defer to Shanahan when it came to the quarterback, he's also the offensive play caller, you know. So he said he thought they'd be very foolish, but he said, but then he also respected the fact that Shanahan is interested in his opinion and asks his opinion. So, you know, I think this is a really great working relationship, and I think this once again kind of goes to strengthen this idea that there is no real dysfunctionality here. All right, so let's move on to number 5, second to last one. Once again, we go back to Jimmy. On the topic of Jimmy Garoppolo, how do you look at his situation at this point? How's he handling this? And what do you expect Thursday night's impact to be on his future with the team? Great question. Shanahan. I mean, the biggest thing with Jimmy is his injuries, and that's been very tough for us when he's been hurt. It's happened 2 of these 3 years. I mean, how many times have we said that on the GoldCast? And I've said this a million times. If we see it, if the GoldCast Empire sees it, if the 49er faithful see it, they see it. Don't think for 1 second that we're not smarter than these guys. These guys have forgotten more football than we'll ever know. And so I appreciated that he had said that. And he says it's happened 2 of these 3 years, and that's where it starts, and Jimmy knows that. I've been very upfront with him with everything. When you take a rookie quarterback and you have a veteran like Jimmy, who we know we can win with, just to move on from that is something that it's not easy to do. That is a good situation for us, and I think that's something that will be important to us this year. So there we go. Kind of once again, backing the Jimmy situation, and again, re-emphasizing what you and I've talked about. To just turn over the keys to this team, to a rookie quarterback in the toughest division in the NFL, with just nothing but sharks and piranhas coming at you every single Sunday, to a guy who's had no experience in one of the toughest, most complicated offensive systems that there is in the league. I just think that's foolish. Jimmy's won at a really high level and proven he can win at a really high level, and that's what we're going to need going forward. And we're going to need that at least through this year. We'll see what happens. Hey, best case scenario, Jimmy takes us to another Super Bowl and we're hoisting Lombardi. That's an amazing situation to have, and it'll be no problem. And if the quarterback has to sit for a second year, so be it. Sit for a second year. What's the harm? You know, what I'm hoping, Raymond, is I hope this puts a fire under Jimmy G's butt, and I hope he really balls out this year. That's what I really want from him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think no surprise there, and it's exactly, you know, I've heard some people, including Matt Mayoko, who says, like, there's been times when Shanahan's been frustrated with Jimmy's progression. I was like, sure. I was like, but every coach in the history of the sport, whether they're a Hall of Famer, Pro Bowler, or average, is going to be frustrated with their quarterback at some time or another. Bill Walsh benched Joe Montana on more than one occasion. Steve Young got into it with his offensive coordinator and coach at times. Tom Brady, we know Tom Brady has gotten into it with Bill Belichick and offensive coordinators at times. All this stuff. Dan Marino, all these guys. So that's not a big surprise, it's normal is what I'm saying. But the main impetus for this move has less to do with Jimmy Garoppolo's skill set as a quarterback, and almost 90% of it, 95%, I would argue, has to do with his health. If he cannot be on the field, then he cannot be the starting quarterback by default. And I get it, you know, that even after his torn ACL, he became less mobile after that. He was a little bit more mobile before that. And he became less mobile after that and became even more confined to the pocket, which is fine for Shanahan because you have to win from the pocket anyways, eventually. So, and more often than not. But for Jimmy's sake, like that was the only issue. That was the only thing I saw. I mean, yeah, the picks were annoying at times because sometimes they seemed a little boneheaded, like what was he thinking there? But for the most part, he was more than double on that ratio. So I was more often than not, you were going to get him making the right throw at the right time than him making a boneheaded throw. And that led to a 13-3 record. So clearly, those picks were not as costly as they could have been. So yeah, this has everything to do with health and not much more.
I agree, and I appreciated Kyle Shanahan addressing that and kind of putting the stamp on some things that you and I have been saying for months on the GoldCast. I mean, you can tell that he's obviously an avid listener and most likely a subscriber, and he's probably given us 5 stars at least 3 times. I'm just guesstimating here. I'm just kind of, just guessing, but I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. All right, so Raymond, final response, my last one that I thought was awesome. One of the reporters asked, "What do you like about Mac Jones?" This was outside of the very first response on number 1. This was my second favorite. He goes, I like that him, along with 4 other guys, I think are capable of being our starting NFL quarterback and capable of winning with." That was the best. What do you like about Mac Jones? I think that him and 4 other guys are capable of starting in the NFL, being on our team. That's what I like about him. I was like, that's great. That's great. And then the last thing he said, which was really good, is once you make an organizational decision that we need to get a starting quarterback, you look into all the options of how to get them, and you watch the ones you felt you had an option with, and that which he was referring to, the ones in the league. And then you look into college and where you think you can get them. The last thing I really liked is that he was talking about mobile quarterback versus pocket passer, and he was saying, like, to him, there's many ways you can win in the league. And he says, you could put Drew Brees in any era. He would have been great as a traditional pocket passer. He said, I think you could have put Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in any era. They would have been great. Deshaun Watson, same thing. He even mentioned Deshaun, someone who I think is probably way back in his rearview mirror at this point, but who was at the forefront probably about 3 months ago. So, again, I don't really think. A lot of people said this takeaway shows to me that they're going to go with Mac Jones. I'm like, well, you guys kept asking him Mac Jones, so he's going to respond to your questions about Mac Jones. I don't necessarily think that means he's getting Mac Jones. I've also seen articles that have said the opposite. Oh, they think this means he's going to draft Justin Fields. Well, I don't know if that's the case either. I'm actually kind of believe the one thing he said was like, we are going to know for sure on Thursday. Like, I think they might be weighing it all the way. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to sleep on it, and on Thursday morning, he's going to wake up and he's going to know who he wants to draft. And I think right now he might be leaning towards one of these guys, but he's juggling them. I'm going to say one thing about Mac Jones, and then I'm done, and I'm going to pass it to you. Our cousin Troy, he talked about this with us, and I agree. I have given up on caring who this pick is. I think you could argue I have never really cared who the pick is the whole time. I mean, almost every episode we've ever done about this, I haven't really cared. And I trust Shanahan and Lynch. They have done so well at getting so much out of every player that they've had. And Shanahan's gotten the best out of every quarterback that's ever played under him. So whether it's Mac, whether it's Fields, whether it's Trey Lance, I think no matter what, we're going to be fine. And you know what? 49er faithful, like he said, just rally around them. Trust the process that they've gone through and know that at the end of the day, whoever they grab is going to be capable of playing and executing Shanahan's system at the highest level because that is what he demands and that is what he gets out of virtually anyone who plays. And so that's kind of like my final closing argument as we head into the draft, which is 2 days away. Just let it go. We're going to be fine. If it's Mac Jones, he's going to ball. And when he's raising that Lombardi, you're going to be like, damn, I'm so glad we got Mac Jones. If it's Justin Fields, he's going to ball. And when he's raising that Lombardi, you're going to be like, damn, so glad we got Justin Fields. Either way, it could be Jimmy G next year raising that Lombardi. And you'd be like, damn, I'm glad we stuck with Jimmy G one more year. Either way, It's going to happen. Shanahan, Lynch, they're too good. They're too aggressive. There's too much talent for this team to fail. And I do believe that somewhere in the next 3 years, we'll be hoisting that Lombardi. And either Jimmy G is going to be holding it or the new quarterback is. But we are going to do it.
I think the main takeaway for me is that whoever they pick, and Brother Choi was spot on with that text message in our family thread, that he's just given up and he's just going to put his trust into John and Kyle, even if it's different from the guy that he personally thought would have been the best fit. Because not only does Kyle and John know this sport way better than any of us, you can combine all of us fans together, we still won't know the sport as well as Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch do as it relates to this position. But more importantly, he believes that they can win a championship with whoever that quarterback is. I think he believes he can win it with Jimmy because obviously we got up to 7 minutes left in the game and we were on the verge of winning that one. But I think in addition to that, he thinks that he can also win with whoever the quarterback they're going to pick on Thursday. He believes that. They're making this decision because the goal is to win. The goal every season is to win. So they're selecting someone based on the belief that that person is capable of winning a Lombardi trophy. Not that in addition to not only just getting the best out of that player, but they believe that that player is good enough to lead the team to a championship and will be the future quarterback, meaning that we'll be able to compete for potentially multiple championships like we have in the past. So that's the takeaway that I get. So if it's Mac Jones, then gosh, they must have seen something in that tape that, that I didn't quite fully understand because they believe that this guy can win championships with us. So let's see what he's got. And if it's Fields, hey, they believe that this guy can win championships with Fields. Let's see what this kid's got because I know not everyone's sold on him. And Trey Lance, same thing. Same thing applies to him. So let's see what this kid can do. Because Kyle Shanahan believes he can win a Super Bowl with this kid. So he knows something that I don't. And it's not the reverse. It's absolutely that. So let's see what happens on Thursday because whoever it is, whoever the slinger is, it is someone that Kyle thinks we can win it all with. So let's have at it and win it all.
Thank you. Absolutely. So Raymond, what you're saying is the 49ers fan base should have faith. They should be faithful, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I agree.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Raymond, we are going to be back on Thursday night after the draft to instant reactions to who the next franchise quarterback will be for the 49ers. The biggest move they have ever made to grab their number one, throwing all the chips in the middle of the table. Raymond, I am so pumped. I know you are too. And so let us know in the comments, do you agree with us? Will you back whoever Shanahan chooses on Thursday? Let us know. Go to youtube.com/theGoldCast and let us know right there in the comments. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.